what does a relationship with food even mean? Is
Right.
that like a relationship you have with someone else? Like, what does that even look like?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a really cool question because those words get slanged around the industry like crazy from clients and coaches alike, right? We want to establish a healthy relationship with food. We want to remove our negative relationship with food. And so ultimately, the way I like to look at it is I like to view food as if it was a person or a physical being in your life and sort of relate to it in that way as we go through this example. Because ultimately, when you're talking about building a relationship with something or someone, what it comes down to is how you're interacting with that thing, right? Or person, how you feel about that thing or person, how that thing or person makes you feel, who you are or who you pretend to be around that thing or person. And then the different identities that you sort of accumulate over the course of your life in order to fit what you expect yourself to be like around different people or different things. So when you're talking about food, it really is like, okay, which foods do you pretend to have your shit together, be on point, like you're hardcore health nut? And then which foods do you hold a completely different identity? And maybe there's shame there. Maybe there's some heavy emotions rooted there that we need to unearth and work through, right? I think when you're looking at your relationship with food, it can't be a one-dimensional relationship. It really is looking globally around how am I interacting with the different types of foods that I'm eating? How do I feel? How do they make me feel? And who do I pretend to be? Or who am I really when I'm eating different foods? Because ultimately, we do wear different faces, we do wear different identities. Just like when we go to a restaurant, we appear to the waitress as a different person than we do talking to our husband, right? Or our wife or whatever. So the same is true in all relationships, food included. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so basically it's like, just like if you were to survey every person you interact with in a day, just
Right.
like you survey every food you eat in a day, you're going to feel certain ways, act certain ways around those different people, around those different foods, essentially.
Yes, exactly. So it's like, okay, does this food nourish me? Yes or no? Does it nourish my body? Does it nourish my mind? Does it nourish my soul? And we don't want to pick our meals apart in that way all the time,
Hmm.
but I think it's really cool to zoom out and go, what are my eating habits like? When do I feel the best? What am I eating? When I feel my worst? What am I eating? And why do I feel that way? If there's sadness and shame linked to eating cookies and ice cream, where did I learn that? Who taught me that, right? Is that really my belief? Is that really my true relationship with that food? Or is that someone else's belief that I sort of adopted? And I think that's a really cool place to be in where you can become curious instead of judgmental of your different relationships with different foods and learn which ones need to be healed and which ones maybe need to support the other ones and step in and play a larger role when maybe we aren't maybe emphasizing those foods quite as much as we should be.
No, that's powerful. So now, when you say, for instance, with cookies, like you mentioned, you have
Right.
that negative emotions tied to it, basically like a bad friend that always puts you down, kind of
Yeah,
thing,
totally.
right?
Yeah.
How
Mhm.
do you try to mend that relationship? Like, where do you go from there? Do you just
Oh,
cut
that's
that
a
friend off like most people do, or do you
right.
figure something out?
Yeah, I mean, I think you need to understand, do I get something out of this? What is it that I get out of this? Do I enjoy eating cookies? Like, do I really like my grandma's cookies? And that's really soul nourishing for me. But eating a sleeve of Oreos is just kind of a coping mechanism that I've adopted over time. What are the
Mm.
contexts that I'm eating these cookies in? And how is it actually serving me in a positive way within these different contexts? And then you can sort of strip away and see, okay, maybe it's not the cookies. Maybe it's when I'm eating my grandma's cookies, I feel soul nourished because I feel connected to her versus the other cookies. It's just like a bad friend that I go to because they make me feel safe in that moment, even though they're putting me down, even though they're
Mm.
eroding my confidence in myself. I can go to them and I know what I'm getting from them, right? We've all had those friends where we know we're going to get the hard truth, the reality check, and we go for it because we want to feel that way about ourselves in that moment. And that sometimes feels safe just because it's familiar, right?
Mm.
The way we start to heal the negative contexts, the negative moments, the negative pulls to use food as a coping mechanism instead of a nourishment tool is awareness. Number one, we need to become aware of which contexts are eroding our relationship with ourselves. Where are we losing sight of who we are and using food as this replacement object to make us feel a certain way based on expectations we have of ourselves, right? So for example, in the example we just used, if I expect myself to always be happy, then in the moments when I feel sad, I may have learned to use cookies to make myself feel happy temporarily. We have to understand what role are they truly playing, and is that really my preference, or is that just a conditioned pattern that I need to become aware of and learn to strip away?
No, that's powerful, because now I think like a lot of people can relate to that to some degree, right?
Mhm.
Especially using it as a relatable example of people you might experience and
Right.
go through.